Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 112. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has liked, shared, commented, who continues to support the show. All that support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guests today. Also want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment provides first-class weight rooms and has earned an excellent reputation of providing the finest quality, design, and customer service. Being a direct manufacturer, the team at Samson brings full customization capabilities and not only branding, but in custom equipment needed to execute your next project. From racks, barbells, and plates, to dumbbells, benches, flooring, storage, and much more. Samson equipment is durable and made to order from premium grade materials, all built from scratch, start to finish. Samson equipment provides professional weight room solutions for all your strength and conditioning needs. See the Samson standard for yourself and learn more at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. Owned and operated by active lifters, Cerberus is trusted by the top strength sport athletes and lifters in the world. Cerberus's wide range of products are made by athletes for athletes, truly living up to its moniker, made by the strong for the strong. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to use promo code STRENGTH_GAME at checkout to receive 10% off your next order at CerberusStrength.com. Also want to thank Sports Kilt. Sport Kilt offers a wide range of universal and clan tartans, as well as custom sport kilts and an excellent selection of accessories and apparel to complement the kilt wear. The kilt is a tradition dating back centuries, worn by nobles, military, and fashionistas. The kilt has been through it all, at times banned, at other times celebrated. For over 25 years, Sport Kilt has been striving to perfect their version of the Scottish classic to create the ultimate garment of fashion and function. Check out the full line of kilts and join the kilt life at sportkilt.com, and be sure to use promo code TSG to save on your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Jay DeMayo. Jay is in his 21st year as a strength and conditioning coach at the University of Richmond and is in his 19th year working with the men's basketball program. DeMayo is directly responsible for the training for the men's basketball and tennis teams and has worked with many of the other Spiders programs over his tenure at Richmond. In addition to his role with the Spiders, DeMayo is also the head strength and conditioning coach at NOVA of Virginia Aquatics, where he's responsible for the year-round training for the senior and senior gold age group swimmers. He got his start in the coaching field as a student strength conditioning coach at his alma mater, SUNY Cortland, from 2000 to 2001, followed by an internship at Binghamton University in 2002. From there, he was a graduate assistant coach at Indiana State University before making his way to Richmond in 2004. An author, presenter, and podcast host, DeMayo is known for his extensive work with the coaching community. As a top expert in the field of strength conditioning, DeMayo has presented at dozens of seminars and clinics across the country. He is the owner of Central Virginia Sports Performance and hosts one of the world's top continuing education events, the Central Virginia Sports Performance Seminar, every July in Richmond, Virginia. He hosts multiple weekly podcasts, including CVAP's podcast and Outside the Rack. A former soccer player at SUNY Cortland, DeMayo is still training past his college playing days. He continues to stay active using the weight room as his lab and his own training to test out new programs, research, technology, and ideas on himself before implementing them with his athletes. Like I said, I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Jay DeMayo.
I
What's
love
going
that
on,
they ask.
everybody? We've got an awesome guest on today. He's done way more episodes than I'm ever going to be able to catch up to. So he's no stranger to podcasts, and I'm sure you see the familiar face. Newly married Coach Jay DeMayo. What's going on today, Coach?
Hey man, appreciate you having me on today. They say that I have the face for radio and the voice for silent film, and I'm sure people, if they're watching this on any of the video platforms, are probably like, golly, is that what I get to look like when I've been coaching for 20 years? The good news is, yes, you do. But no, Nick, really appreciate you having me on, bro. Really excited to be here. You've been putting out some great stuff, and I'm really appreciative of all the work and effort that you're putting in to help everybody get better, man. So definitely before we get into all the weeds here, I want to make sure that we get that.
Well, I appreciate it. I know you're a humble guy. I mean, you got a nice silver fox beard, so that's you got that going for you, and you got the smooth radio voice. So I think you fit the part. I've been listening to your shows for years, and everybody that goes to CVAPs raves about it too. So this is a real exciting episode for me. So hey, without any further ado, let's get into the weeds a little bit. Let's kind of go back in time for yourself and figure out how you really got involved in strength training and kind of lifting, like the sports you kind of got introduced to playing growing up into what you're kind of currently doing nowadays to stay active and still train.
Yeah, so going all the way back um, to this time called the 90s, when I was in high school, is when we first started to lift weights. And there was an old bodybuilder that ran Fairport Fitness. And I graduated from Fairport High School in 1997. And he taught me sort of how to lift. I think that when you're in high school, and especially back then, you tried to figure things out. But I mean, we jokingly say that in college we deal with 18 to 23-year-old knuckleheads. Well, we were blockheads in high school doing God knows what in there. I'm just happy that Jim didn't toss us immediately and allowed us to figure some things out. And that kind of led me to my time at SUNY Cortland. I was a Division III soccer player, and it was great. I loved my time at C State, the 2023 Division III national champions of football. I'd like to throw that out there. But my time got cut short. I got hurt, and I was really fortunate to have an athletic trainer who was also our strength coach. And that really kind of started in Major League Baseball and found its way to some Division III teams to start so that they could have someone. I mean, it was probably more of the situation where they were going to end out just being sort of like a weight room moderator, because we had a billion teams at Cortland. Like, it was preposterous. I mean, we had a JV soccer team. Like, there was two teams for every sport. So there's no way. I mean, there aren't enough minutes in the year for this poor person to have been able to train everyone, let alone be an athletic trainer as well. So she was like, "Hey, you like to lift weights and you're done playing. What do you think about maybe, training a couple teams?" And I was like, "That sounds freaking awesome." And then I wrote arguably the two worst programs in the history of strength and conditioning that I thought were the absolute perfect, greatest things ever written back in 1999. Um, and it's all evolved since. I mean, everything from how I train to going in and failing miserably as a power lifter and bombing out like there's no tomorrow, to now with jokingly what I like to call the fight to make conditioning great again, turning more into like a cardio bunny, if that's even a term anymore, is what we used to call people that would just be on the elliptical for hours. Actually, it's probably the stairmaster for hours back again in the 90s. Um, but yeah, man, like there's a bunch of jumps around in between, a bunch of great training partners that actually were assistant coaches in my time in Richmond, guys that have moved on and are in great places doing amazing things. The weight room and training has been great to me, and this place right here has been pretty solid too. It's allowed me to I've been really, really fortunate to be in a situation where I've had the same head coach, for my duration with the team here. And for 20 years, I've had the luxury of being able to fall on my face and make mistakes. And that's not something that we all have. And I realize how fortunate I am to have that, and for Moon to have had patience, and for us to be able to grow and kind of mature as coaches together. Because as you get older, your perspectives and your thoughts change on things, and it's been a great ride so far here.
Yeah, that's one, that luxury, like being able to kind of learn and still make mistakes. And you're talking about it almost through the lens of like when you first started at Cortland and you didn't know anything. I hope you still have those programs somewhere, at least just kind of tucked away. I have some of my old ones and they're a horror show to look back at, but to see the progress of like where you've come from is always cool. But you talk about like the time you've been at Richmond for going on 22 years now, right?
I got here in January 2004. So this will
Yeah.
be my 22nd school year.
That's wild. And you're still talking about like the luxury of having the ability to kind of make mistakes and kind of the buy-in, especially from a coaching staff, so that you can try new things and still push the envelope and not kind of just get stuck in the status quo. And I think a lot of young coaches don't realize that, like when you're an intern or you're a grad assistant, like you have that time and you have that luxury to be able to do it because you have like a little bubble of full-time staff to kind of correct you. But when you get into that head position or you're a full-time member, like there's a lot more pressure on it, but it's nice to know that, hey, your sport coach is like, listen, I know you do your job real well. Like keep pushing the envelope, keep making like quote unquote mistakes for yourselves. And then keep making sure that we're doing the best as possible. You've been in that position for, like you said, that long and having the same staff. Like, what outside of like just having such a good relationship with the staff and like kind of being able to grow and build the program up for where it's been for 22 years, like what do you think is an advantage for staying in a place for so long versus the people that you kind of see, maybe not necessarily on purpose, program hop and go to different places, but they try to elevate their careers? You can't, it doesn't seem like it's feasible to do it as much as like some people can do it, if that makes sense. Like you don't get to do it very
Yeah.
often.
Yeah. I mean, with everything in life, there's a yin to your yang, right? And I personally, the biggest positive is the ability to have roots, right? And my wife and I are fortunate, that, you know, being here for as long as we have, like she has a house, I had a house. So now we have a property that we were renting, and then we have another one because of the money that was bringing in and things of that nature. And we can get into all of that stuff later in the conversation if you want. But I think the biggest thing is being here under the same head coach is when you understand their methods and their principles behind how they build their program, it's much easier to piggyback your programming to understand what's important and what they need from you. You get a really good understanding of their expectations and what's important to them so that you can then learn what the battles are worth picking and what the fights you walk away from are. And then, to be honest, like you can see through a lot of the fads, right? And I was very fortunate early on. We were one of the early adopters at looking at like readiness and heart rate and practice and training loads and RPEs and all these things. And there were just some things that were great, and there were some things that didn't really work, right? Well, not didn't work isn't the right word. There are some things that weren't as impactful, right? Like for one example, we were looking to try to quantify practice. The problem is your head coach still wants to run practice the way they want to run it. So that's not going to be good, right? If they want you to figure out a way to better have the athlete prepared for practice, how can you use the same data that you would use to build practice? So we came up with some systems around that, and it's really simple. It's just, if it's a one-off, we try to do some things to recover, things of that nature. But being able to understand and learn the kind of the typical player that the coach brings in as well. So you understand, because each year right now, especially with Portal Combat and all these things going on, it's a new team. And every year it's just an N of one. So you're almost starting over every year, trying to build the team together. They're training together and working your way. It doesn't matter who you study from, what you learn from. You go from general, where everybody's basically doing similar stuff or almost the identical thing, to specific, where you branch out, and Johnny's doing this and Jay's doing that and Nick's doing the other thing and whatever, and how that progresses. But understanding how you can progress that within the coach's system so that you don't fry them, break them, tear them down, and they can still practice 5 days a week, because that's what they're doing for something crazy like 45 weeks out of the year, and it just is what it is. You evolve and you continue to move forward in a positive, reinforced progression, or you become a victim of Darwinism. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I like the term Portal Combat. It's unfortunate. We kind of were talking before, and just kind of the landscape of college athletics is getting very interesting lately, especially like in your realm with like high level like men's basketball, women's basketball. Like, I mean, football was already there, like understanding all those things and just the Power Five system and where NCAA and NIL is going, it's going to get crazy. And
Going.
your programming is going to be wild when you're going to have the turnover like of more than half your team, not due to graduation, but due to transferring and bringing other people in. Then that almost goes back to, you could be in one spot for 22 years, and instead of being able to develop a player for 4 or 5 years to get them to the point where they're a senior and they're like really cooked and you understand them well, it's like the same as if you transferring to another school as a coach and going to a new program. You have to learn the whole team again. You're learning the whole team that's coming to you every single year. So like looking at that, like programming wise, do you end up like knowing the system, knowing how the coach recruits and how people are brought in and like to play certain positions, to play a certain style? Do you, knowing that landscape is kind of on the horizon, or you're starting to see it a little bit now, do you already start to kind of generalize your program a little bit more in the beginning, know that, hey, I might have an athlete for 1 year, half a year at that, and then if they come back the next year, great, then we'll start to advance them a little bit? Or are you kind of giving them everything you can in the first year because they might turn over?
The answer to that's yes. And I think that it probably sounds like a cop out, but it's true. So what we're going to do is we are going to progress to put them in the best situation possible for them to be successful in our system. There are some things that I know about our system, and I know that Moon is going to want these guys to be able to do. There are things that you see within our offense, which is based off the Princeton principles, where there are specific back cuts and different actions in the offense that you're going to see. We're going to get really good, borderline perfect on how we put our foot in the ground and we cut in these angles. We're going to go over how we do it. We're going to go over how we can do it quicker, how we can cover more ground. We're going to go over how we can build it. And then there are just some things that we have seen that really, for the most part, this kind of homogeneous type of athlete that we bring in has success with when it comes to improving athleticism. And some exercises that, and programming that we have seen better success with how things operate on the court as well. After that, it comes down to, how can we involve ourselves with the athlete at a level so that they have a better understanding that we're trying to be the best for them? we've done that a few ways. I think the first one is eating lunch with them every day has been very helpful. And not just eating lunch with them, but like rule number one for us is no AirPods, no hats, no hoods at the table. If we're going to be around each other, we're going to get to know each other and we're going to have fun and we're going to get to, really know who everybody is on this team to try to develop relationships so everybody knows who they are and who they're dealing with. The second is having like as open and relaxed environment in the weight room as you can. And because I see these guys 5-6 days a week, if they want to come in, like right now we're training 4 days a week. I've got a few of the guys who came in on Wednesday. I'll come in Saturday to work out. There'll be a few guys that show up then too. They're seeing you every day for 3 to 4 hours, and you're the only face that's always there. That's great. Can also get sick of you if you're a prick. So don't be a prick, right? It's kind of simple math, but sometimes it gets in the way. And then the last thing that I think we've had really good success with is we kind of have our movement-based day, if that's what we want to call it, where everything's single-legged and we're doing all our cutting mechanics and our track exercises and yada, yada, yada. And then we have our second day, which is more of our traditional strength day or more of the original-ish 1x20 type setup. And within those days, we have 3 blocks, and within each of the blocks, it just says indie in one of the spaces. And it's just for what they individually want to do, need to do, and have to do. So they ask, what's this indie mean? All right, so the first square is do something you really like to do. If there's anything you'd love to do in the weight room, do it. Why? Because if you're going to really enjoy doing it, you're going to get after it. I don't care if it's curls. I don't care if it's another set of bench. I couldn't care less, whatever it is. If you love to do it, you're going to get after it. So you're going to kill it. Go. The second is something you're not good at or that you almost dread doing because you're so bad at it. Because if you want to be a good athlete, you probably should take the things that you suck at and you should probably try to not suck at them. And they just look at you like, oh, that makes sense. Okay. And the third one is, and I typically give them a week or two to get, these conversations going is, Nick, what do we need you to do for us to be a better team? What does Nick need to be better at? Or what does Nick do well that's going to make us successful? Let's make sure we're good at that. And we just break things down and we just talk through it. And, metrics are great. We jump on force plates. We have a heart rate monitoring system that does accelerations and all this, that, and the third. And we weigh them in and out every day for hydration. And I think that we do a good job with all of that. But at the end of the day, what I really believe has brought us the best results is those conversations, because that first conversation then turns into, hey, man, 3 times after going through it later, how's that going? It's still pretty hard. I'm doing pretty well with it. I was thinking, though, like, what about this instead? It's like, okay, well, if it's still working, why would we take it out? But what is there in the workout that you absolutely dread? Like something that you look at and you're like, God, you just want, like, you're literally trying to sneak around me to not do it. And they're honest. There's 0 times out of 10 is it squatting or deadlifting because they see the value in it. It's always something that is just kind of a auxiliary work, exercise, if you may. It's like, okay, how about we do it instead of that? Like, oh, really? I can do something that I think is going to help me more, and I don't have to do the stuff that I think sucks. Like, yeah. Because you think it's going to help you get better. Every time it works, it does. So if you think it does, there's probably a better chance of it helping you because you're going to try more at it than me telling you you've got to do some, some stupid good morning or something that you think blows. Like, no, like, yeah, go ahead. And they seem to buy into it pretty well. And, those conversations just lead into more of building their routines and what we can possibly do better for them. To be better the day after a game, the day before a game, the day of the game, right before the game. halftime, post game. What do we need to do to make sure we're ready today and to be better tomorrow? And as soon as they understand our principles and how we put the programs together, all of it falls into place really well, man. And it's fun too. Like, instead of sitting here and like pretending that these metrics are deities and trying to chase these numbers that may or may not actually impact anything, or forcing ourselves to find a number to make ourselves feel more like we have a role and a value, like sitting there and doing the things we say we do, like listening to the kids and paying attention and making sure they know that they're more than just an athlete and that you're there for them, really helps them start to do what my true goal is with everything we do. And that is to allow the work that they've put in for their whole life in basketball to flip on its head and allow the game of basketball to start working for them.
That's awesome. There's a lot of good points to take away from that. Like, I think how you kind of structure everything. I mean, just from eating together and kind of having that open relationship and kind of building the trust. And again, that's more than basketball, like what you're doing, like just breaking bread with them and getting to kind of know them more personally. Like you're not overloading them with like rules and everything. They're just kind of guidelines as part of the team because you see the bigger picture of them eating together and then them getting some autonomy to train and pick and choose the times and understanding kind of human psychology. And if you force a kid, like an 18 to 23-year-old kid, to be there 6 days a week for 4 hours, you can make you can make them hate their most favorite thing in the world. You can make them hate the sport that they choose to play if you like time manage them and put them on such a strict schedule that they don't want to do it anymore. And if you think that they enjoy training as much as basketball, you're
Oh, you're a fool.
completely delusional. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that Chris has done a great job with. And we've both definitely evolved professionally in our opinion of is we try to consolidate the things that quote unquote or hashtag or whatever matter through the day. And we do our best to have our stuff start at lunch. Like there was a time when we were like, they need to eat breakfast together because they're not going to go to breakfast. And that led to more just dissent and anger and just like grumpy people because they're college kids. They don't like it. They don't want to do it and they're going to despise you for it. So now we do have some kids. We have a group of kids that comes in every morning early. They love to call themselves a breakfast club. They love to get up and get an extra like basketball workout in, skill session in the morning, and then go to breakfast. It ain't the whole team though. The whole team will come to lunch. We talk about how we fuel ourselves, the importance of how we set our plate, the importance of our hydration. We have like a 6-week progression that we go through to hopefully help them have a better understanding of how they can fuel themselves better pre-practice. Come across campus, you do your rehab or you lift and flip, stretch right into practice. We're done from 12 to 4 at the latest. We're done out the door with what is quote unquote your mandatory stuff. You've got 20 hours of the day left. You want to come in and shoot at night? You're probably going to be more apt to do it if you don't have to wake up at 7 o'clock for this old guy to yell at me because all I'm eating is pancakes and syrup, Or if you want to get up in the morning and do something, you can do that. The last 2 big men we've had, okay, we have this thing that they call big man camp. I don't know. It's just something one of our assistant coaches does, and the big guys always seem to have this time open. It's awesome. It's at like 11 o'clock or something like that, 10:30. But every day, half an hour before it, for the last year and a half, I've had one of them coming in to do their conditioning because they want to do extra conditioning. So they come in and get on the Versa Climber with me. Like when you tell them, we're only taking this small part of your day, that's all you have to do. You've got the rest of the time to do whatever else you want. And you actually allow them the ability to make the right decisions. You'd be surprised how often they make the right decision.
Yeah, that's a good point. You kind of need to let them figure it out for themselves, but you give them some opportunities and you kind of show them the way. Ultimately, they have to pick and choose whether they do it or not. And like if they're the ones that are going to end up playing, you can kind of poke and prod them as much as possible, but you understand that as soon as you start forcing them to do those things, like just like breakfast, if the whole team doesn't want to be there, you're probably going to do a lot more harm than anything. And it's great that you guys realize that too. And you're like, yeah, this is probably we got to take this out. And that again, like you can only go against the grain so often, especially with like these kids. So like you got to pick and choose your battles a little bit more so too. And you guys were super flexible and adaptable to make sure that it fit the system, it fit the team you're working with, and you still got the goals of like what your philosophy encompasses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And kind of piggybacking off that, like we have very few like hard and fast like must do's outside of that mandatory time period. One of them is every game day, it's like 45 minutes or an hour before shoot around if we're home. It's 45 minutes before breakfast if we're on the road. The freshmen, the walk-ons, and then anybody else who wants to come. Managers to moon. Doesn't matter. We've had 26 people in a Marriott weight room working out. We go through this arm farm workout. I post them on my Instagram every now and then. I call it the harvest, whatever. It's just a bunch of people in a weight room doing curls, shoulders, and triceps, busting each other's chops. But the reason we do it is because we want to make sure the walk-ons and the scout team are up and ready to go. So shoot around's good. So it's like, okay, if everybody's up and because here's the thing, if they're late for me, I'll handle it. If they're late for Moon on a game day, like forget about it. Like this ain't going to happen. Like this is bad news bears. So let's make sure we do something simple. Now, if we have a freshman that's playing and getting minutes, he still is told to come to Arm Farm. But it's not JD who's the one that tells them they have to go to Arm Farm. It's the players. And they're like, no, this is how we do things here. So I think even more so too with how this has evolved, when you bring the right players in and you have some of that consistency in your roster, just enough so that there's people that understand this is how we do it. If you're not playing or you're a rookie, you're in there. You know what? And if you just like to lift, I mean, shoot, one of the best shooters we ever had, he never missed one. It's like some people, they just want to get up and do something before they go to shoot around. Cool. Come on in. More the merrier. I had 3 managers last year that didn't miss one. Like, awesome. Like, I love it. Like, get in here. You're part of the team. You're one of the guys. Like, it's what we say the weight room is, right? It's like on that day, it's the place where everybody's on an equal playing field. JD, the walk-ons, the scholarship kid, the manager, our ops guy, our associate head coach, our director of operations, our SID, our athletic trainer, whoever's in there. It doesn't matter. We're all doing the same stuff. And we're all giving each other a ration of shit for whatever we can, because it's just a bunch of dudes busting each other's chops, trying to get them up and have a good time. And it might be one of the greatest things we've ever done. And it has negative impact on anything that has anything to do with performance. But it's just a lot of fun and it brings people together. And knock on wood, nobody's been late for shoot around. So like it ticked the boxes.
Oh yeah. I mean, even if it's like a half step back, it's 10 steps forward after that, just with the camaraderie and the atmosphere and everything. And I did something similar with that when I was at Jacksonville, like with our men's lacrosse team. We would always do a game day lift with like the developmental guys. I mean, you got 60 guys lined up like to play, and you're only maybe going to get through your first 2 or 3 midfield lines, and a couple guys will go in if it's a blowout or something like that. But I think one pregame, like an hour before they got to be on the field to start doing warm-ups, I would lift early, go do my stuff early, and then start cracking the door right on time. and there'd be a line of guys out there. And one pregame, we had 40 guys come in,
That's awesome.
like out of 55. I was like, this okay, you guys, and then some of the older guys that were playing, the training room is right there. They just want to come see what the other guys are doing because they hear about it and they want to be a part of it, but they also know they have to play. And I let them go tarps off. They can do whatever they want as long as they clean the weight room when they're done. And the last 10 minutes, everybody has to participate because we throw, like, it's them and a partner, and they throw med balls basically for 10 minutes straight against a wall in the weight room. But that wall is also the opposing team's locker room.
Ah,
So it,
so,
and
oh, they hate you.
oh yeah, they hate me. It was great.
That's
It was
great though.
great. And those guys love it. And then you get them on the sideline, and the sideline erupts like during that game. And because they just had their game day basically, and now they get to go cheer on the rest of their teammates. And then like that work still, they're kind of putting in and kind of banking it for the next season or when their name is called. And they're as much a part of the team as even if they suit up that day and play as they are if they don't. So no, that's like everything you talked about, like the psychology and like kind of the camaraderie and like the teamwork and everything, like from head coach down to the last player on the bench, like that stuff gets lost, I think. So like if you're looking at a coach coming up, like if you've got young interns or people considering like the profession, like what would you say are some of the most important things that they need to learn from the get-go that they're not learning in like school, they're not learning in like some normal like internships or just from talking to people? Like what would you say like this next group of young coaches really needs to know about the profession in order to be at a place for 20 years or to have a 20-year plus career?
Ooh, can't believe I'm going to say this. But the first thing is it's not that serious. Um, we're lifting weights, yo. I like we love it. It's great. It's important to us. I'm sure that we all have said at least a trillion times that it's your release, your mental health is lifting or training or whatever, but it's not that serious. Like we're training athletes and it's awesome. We get to wear shorts and a t-shirt and be around 18 to 23-year-olds who are doing things that chances are we never could have done. So just keep that in mind. I think the biggest thing, and one thing that has been a topic of conversation with a colleague here of mine, is that like there's two different ways that you can learn what the greats have done and did. You can just copy and paste it. Okay. And you can just do it. Because people like Dr. Verkhoshansky, who Natalia is now carrying the torch for, Dr. Yesis, who Yosef and Jeff Moyer, Joseph Johnson with Ultimate Athlete Concepts and Jeff Moyer are probably the two leading experts and highest level mentees of docs, like truly understand what their teaching was, and you can find the answers to all of your questions, because most of your questions and most of the mistakes people make when it comes to what they do is actually really written in what they've written, their books, and it actually has been said in the presentations that they've given, both at CVASPs and other places. But you have to listen and you have to actually hear what they're saying. If you just listen and look for the things that you think are cool, that you want to do, and you just want to regurgitate things and you don't understand the actual principles behind what they're doing, you don't understand the scientific practice behind it, you don't understand the progressions, you don't understand the regressions, and you don't understand what they were truly looking at, then you start doing a bunch of bullshit that you get people doing things and it takes way too long, or they get dinged up, or you try doing some crazy stuff that has no place with anything that what we're doing. I say this to people all the time. I used to, I'll tell you two stories. The first or second CVAS we did, we had Doc. He didn't come to Richmond. He did this thing on Cisco WebEx. And we were demoing what I thought was the best guy that I had doing a couple of his special exercises, the knee drive and the paw back, and maybe the front and side lunge, but I'm not 100% sure on those. And if I'm honest, I don't want to go back and watch it because Doc watched the first rep and literally asked, "This is really what I'm going off of?" Like, I sucked as a coach, no clue what I was doing, and basically said that everything that was in the video, they should do the opposite. And this isn't my seminar, by the way. This is one of my guys, a guy that I'm like, this dude's perfect. Nope, he sucks. And so that was embarrassing, but it taught me that I had to listen and learn exactly what they were doing, because the things that I thought were better, he already went through that step. Like, people sit here and they try to change the progression that you need to get to depth jumps. Like, I'm sorry, do you think Yuri Verkhoshansky didn't try that? Like, he was stuck in a stairwell in Russia in the winter. What do you think you're thinking of that this man didn't have the idea to come up with? Like, really? Please send me the list, because I can probably tell you most of them where he thought of it and why it's incorrect. For example, the big one is like, you have to do altitude drops before you do depth jumps. Well, if you watch the presentation that Natalia gave about progressing the jumping exercises, it was either asked or she discussed this on its own. And like, altitude drops train the athlete to not project. They train the athlete to stop. They're great at that. If you're looking at developing eccentric braking forces, they're sensational at that. It's exactly what you should be doing, right? But you don't want to stop. You want to load hard and explode maximally. If all you're doing is trying to stop, you're training your body to stop, not use the elastic recoil and the stretch shortening cycle to be as explosive and violent as possible. But someone said it at some point, and everybody said that makes sense, and nobody ever asked the person who was the source. So while many of the sources you can't reach out to unless you have a higher power ability that no one else possesses, these people that studied under them, like, if you want to know what Doc was thinking and what he was doing, Jeff Moyer at DC Sports Training and Joseph Johnson at UAC, Matt Tomey at Nebraska, those are the people that I would say, find a way to get in touch with Natalia when it comes to the jumping progression. Antonio Squilante, I believe, has a pretty good idea. If that he's translated some of her work, I think Antonio would be the next person, someone who's very open to speaking with people about everything. But go to the people that, if you can't go to the source, go to the people that learn from the source. You want to talk about Bondarchuk, and you're not talking to Jake Jensen or Derek Evely, like, I don't know who you're talking to. Like, there are people out there who learned underneath these amazing practitioners, the people who are the Mount Everest of strength and conditioning, the people that we say we stand on the shoulders of these giants. But we just take what we think is great and we run with it instead of doing the things that they researched and filled the questions up that we are asking now with the right answers. And we're not learning their principles and what they're actually progressing through and to. And therefore, when we get to areas where there needs to be some form of an alteration or intensification or whatever it may be, we don't know the right way to go. And that's when you see a lot of this hocus pocus bullshit.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you say it like that too. When a lot of coaches are coming up, people say like you don't want to be a copy and paste kind of coach. But at the same time, like if you're coming straight from the source, you're coming from someone that has so much experience and has done so much research on it, and you're trying to elicit a certain response and a training method, you don't really want to like completely take away from that method because of everything that went into it. Now, there's context to everything, and you have to make it fit your system and stuff like that. But if you Frankenstein it and take too much away from like what the principles that actually were compiled to create that program, create that kind of formula, then you're missing the boat. And then now you get an intern that kind of copies someone that's already copying something else, but they bastardize it, and then it just kind of keeps filtering down, and then it's indiscernible like what the program is anymore. And no one even knows like what the purpose of it is anymore either.
100%. And then now what are you doing? I mean, now probably at the end of the day, you're just doing 3 sets of 10, a squat and RDLs and whatever else, right? Because you just have run so far away from whatever the initial person you were studying under was actually doing that it's just like, huh? But
It's crazy. Hey, so
yeah,
kind of touching on it. I know it's a little kind of close to your heart with everything, and a little bit like what we're talking about here with kind of seeking out the source and seeking out people that have actually kind of translated those researchers or studied under them. We had Antonio on the show before too, and he was awesome to talk to. A lot of it like went over my head. I was like, I'm gonna have to go back and read a bunch of this. I mean, the same as a lot of the presenters that come on CVAPs. I'm like, I need you to slow down, and I need to like breathe and kind of take a break in between. But for those that don't know, like in the strength conditioning profession that are living under a rock, like kind of touch on CVAPs and like how like what was like the inception of it? Like what was the reason for kind of you going about starting it? And I know like as we're recording this and then when this gets released, this year's conference is going to be going on July 20th to 21st, 2024, correct?
yes, sir.
Hey,
Yes, sir.
so let's touch on like why really you felt the need to kind of do this. You speak, you publish a lot of our information, and you do a lot of your podcasts and everything too, a lot of networking and everything. But why was this so important for you to kind of keep going? And it's been going for years now.
Yeah. First, yeah, Antonio's such an amazing resource and such a great human. He's done in his short time, like running through the ranks, like he's done so much to help so many people. And he's like first team all good guy. So glad to hear that was great because he's so sensational. He and Christine are two of my favorite people. And they've done a lot to help me. So I'm very fortunate to have been able to, not just cross paths with them, virtually, but work alongside them with some of these projects, and it's been so amazing. But yeah, CVAP started basically from me getting yelled at. I've talked about this story quite a few times. We used to have a clinic that we did here, just like your back, room, bring a bunch of your buddies in, pay for a bar tab, day-long clinic. And I was looking around and I'm like, man, there's nothing for basketball. Like there used to be this old thing that we called the sports specific conference the NSCA did. This was before the coaches conference. If anybody is old enough to have remembered those, I'm proud of you for listening to a podcast. Like we're a dying breed, those of us that attended those. But like there's football, there's a lot for football and baseball. There's nothing for basketball. So I just started sending emails to like every school, every strength coach, like, if we did this, would you be interested? And Charles Stevenson replies in only the nicest, kindest way that a great human like Charles Stevenson can reply. Funny you should ask. I'm actually doing that right now. And I'm like, okay, well, how can I help? And I probably made Charles's life miserable and probably was nothing more than just some little idiot twerp that was in his way. But he put on one of the best events that I've ever been to. Met some amazing people. Heather Mason, one of them, who's going to present here. You know, when we talked about it on her podcast, we introed her as a presenter. I mean, it was just sensational. And I came back and I got dog cussed because everybody knew how great that ended up being, and our clinic was trash. And I'm like sitting there getting ripped. And I'm like, you know what? He's right, but I'm going to show him. So I put together, it was like a 2.5-day event. And it was like everybody who was anybody. Like back then, the Elite FTS forums were the big thing. We had the Diesel crew from there. We had Doc. We had Bondarchuk. We had Martin Rooney was going to do like a whole day on the Parisi stuff. Zach Avanash. Like, I mean, like if they were anyone at that point, they were coming. I sold like 5 seats, shut it down. So after I cried for 2 days, I kind of refocused and started over. And my relationship with Yosef started to grow, and we put together this smaller thing that ended up growing, and it's hopefully returning to what Bob Alejo loves to call the 200-person roundtable and barbecue, where it is a day and a half of just open, honest, candid sharing, people talking about this is what I do, these are the results we get, and this is what we see, and we talk about it. Presentations, we shoot for somewhere in the area of 45 minutes with 45 minutes of question and answer. Any time left over, we try to leave a lot of space for people to be able to discuss everything and anything with presenters, people that are there as attendees, vendors, you name it. And it really is great. And I'm so happy that, you know, we've had some change in leadership here, and they've asked for us to come back on campus. And I couldn't be happier to show off, you know, get back to showing off how great this campus is, get back to showing out and really show off the facility that we have. Cause, I mean, it's dope. You know, the basketball facility that we have is really amazing. The room we're going to have the presentations in is absolutely gorgeous, and couldn't be happier to be back here, back where it belongs. We've made a pivot. You know, I think that right now, in the world that we were a part of with NIL, Portal Combat, all those things, I think that really getting back to the idea of they don't know how much you know until they know how much you care, and understanding where these athletes are at their most vulnerable or where we need to be our best. And since I don't see there being a crossover event that truly focuses on bringing the strength coach, athletic trainer, physical therapist, whatever physio we want to call it, together, we're really going to try to push to be that. Think that the athlete doesn't need us more than the moment they get hurt. And, you know, you can sit here and you can quote Hank all you want and say, you know, injuries aren't part of my game, but, you know, they can be part of yours, and that's great. But things happen. I mean, basketball, dude, like Newton had a theory. Like, you fall down, like you land on a foot. Like, I don't have the land on a foot, my lateral malleolus touches the ground ankle program. Like, I just don't. If you have it, cool, send it. cvasps@gmail.com. Would love to see it. But I don't have it. You know, we do a lot of things and guys get back pretty quick. We've been fortunate that we've had limited, larger catastrophic injuries, but things happen. How can you be better when they do? You know, and as Charlie likes to say, if training is rehab and rehab is training, then understanding how we can rehab better means we can understand how we can train better. And it's really where I want this focus to be. And that's why we brought in people to talk about metrics and the research at the highest levels in the NHL, and how performance therapists are looking at the athlete pre-practice to understand what they can do in training, things they should do in training, what things they can do to help alleviate issues or whatever they may be seeing. And then, how you can build a staff and understanding your professional development and growth and things of that nature. And then the one factor that gets left out so often is game speed and how we can take that last step from rehab to return. I think it's important. I think that we all have some form of a concern with it. Whether you sit here and you say, my athletic trainer doesn't understand the language, or my athletic trainer doesn't let me do this, that, or the third, or, they're not letting me get involved early enough, or they don't understand the role of strength. Well, if you're saying these things, newsflash, guess what they're saying about you? So bring your trainer, bring your staff. We'd love to have you. We'd love for people to be able to sit down and be part of these conversations. We have, again, it's a 200-person roundtable and barbecue. There'll be somebody grilling out right here on the patio. We'll have something local on a tap that we can all sit and have a couple soda pops and talk training and go through what people are seeing, what they're not seeing, how we can be better, trying to build a common knowledge. But yeah, and Nick, I want to make sure that anybody who's listening to this, especially because, like I said, I've got the face for radio and the voice for silent film, and you've listened to me for going on almost an hour right now. So those of you that have spent the time, if you put in SG pod, it's capital S, capital G pod, capital P, small OD 10, we'll give you 10% off everybody that orders, for listening to the podcast and being part of everything that Nick's doing here. Because everything at the strength game is great, and I appreciate you allowing me to ramble about CVASP here a little bit at the end too, man, because it's something that's really important to me. All these things, we say we want to leave this a better place. That's just what we're trying to do here.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing it, and obviously like throwing that in there as well too. If anybody has not read any of the manuals or not gone to the conference or heard you speak and kind of see the importance of all the stuff that we've already touched on, like this is a great opportunity to do it. And I mean, for me, this is kind of reason why I started the podcast too, was to have these kind of candid conversations, albeit they're kind of individual. Like when I get to go to conferences and stuff, you kind of get a group of people together and try to find that common knowledge. But you're right. A lot of times it ends up being like, well, we're talking to the same sort of career person. Like we're talking to coaches about coaching. Like we're not really going back, and most of the time, unless other people are doing it a lot, going back and like talking to their sports medicine, like their nutrition staff and everything. Hey, this is what other places are doing. This is like, how can we kind of do this? It feels like we're kind of a lot of times on our own island because yeah, we're so busy. But if we can speak the same language and realize that, hey, in an athlete's holistic view, like for rehab, recovery, strength training, return to sport, like there's a continuum for it all. And at one point in time, we're all going to be involved. We're all involved in it at all times. It's just like who's kind of the most important factor at this point in time is when that's happening. So if you're not on the same page with your staff, like this is a great opportunity to kind of go out and learn a lot of stuff and then brainstorm and come up with your own strategy as a staff, not just as a coaching staff, but as a performance, like health science staff for your athletic department. So that's awesome. I appreciate it. I know you kind of touched on too, like what the goals for it are. I know there's some lofty goals going forward, and I think keeping that conversation open is really cool. So, with all the research and all the things that you kind of have these conversations, like you're at the forefront talking to all these individuals, kind of setting up the conference, doing your own research and everything. How has your training now kind of evolved a little bit? Because I see you all the time kind of putting together your own programs and kind of being like your N equals one, like your own little test dummy before you go in and kind of put it with the athletes. Like, when you kind of think about structuring your program, are you just kind of the experiment before it gets to the athletes, or what do you kind of like to do on a daily basis to keep active and keep the juices flowing?
Yeah, I do like to do that because I like to still be able to feel and understand like what they're going through. Um, there's some things that, hey man, 45. I'm closer to retirement than I am going to college. Like, there's some things, a few years ago I could pull 550 for a 20. Like, great. That ain't happening no more. So yeah, there are some curveballs in there. There's some things that have been taken out. There are some times where uh 10 years ago, if I would have seen the weights that I was moving, I would have said some things to myself that I will not say on your show. But it's just one of those things where father time starts to do, get you going a little bit. The one thing though, I mean, obviously in the season, the arm farm with the group is something that's always there. The game day green work is always there. And I forever, um, as long as I can, the one thing that will always be part of my training is that if somebody is coming in to do something extra and they don't have somebody to do it with, I'm not going to let them suffer on their own. So, and especially like with conditioning stuff, like 30 minutes of zone 2 for a kid in this generation has got to be the most miserable experience they could be part of, you know? So, yeah, I'll jump on the Versa Climber with you for half an hour. Like, you're not going to suffer by yourself. You want to do some today would be threshold intervals. You're like, yeah, man, that sucks. I'll suck with you. Like, it'll be awful with you. Like, we're doing some aerobic power work in a couple days, couple weeks. Yep. I will dog cuss myself between sets too. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm not gonna let you go it alone. Um, and yeah, that helps keep me young, I think. Or it just wears me down more. But it's something that I will probably have. I mean, I definitely will have as long as I physically can do it. Is There'll never be a time where they're by themselves.
I like that. That's a great kind of philosophy to have and show like you're still bought into the program. You're willing to kind of step out of your role because it you go from being the head strength coach like to the team where they kind of know your stature, they know how long you've been there, they know like where you kind of fall in the chain of command and like the food chain there. But for you to like step out of the office and like get sweaty and get in the dirt and suck with them, like you probably have that kid bought in forever just from that one like session instead of kind of sit on your computer and kind of type away if it's especially if it's one player by himself and they're willing to come in and they want to get better. It's a pretty cool thing to be able to kind of do.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that, and it's still fun, for me to do it, and you know, and, and there are days like the days that they beat me are great for them, and it's those days bring even more buy-in when they've grown and improved and done all these things. But yeah, man, it's just to me that's the fun stuff is still getting in there with them, and you know game days are always fun and having all that. But yeah, like doing those things is a blast.
Yeah, we talked about that kind of being fun, and obviously game days are their own type of fun as well too. Like even if we're support staff and we're kind of in the shadows, just kind of watching them live out their dreams, like we get to be a part of kind of that preparation, development, and they get to go out and showcase it, which is
Hmm.
which is always exciting. When you kind of watch that stuff, like it is fulfilling in itself, but when you kind of reevaluate at the end of the year, I know we're going into the next year. When you look at your program, you look at kind of what you're doing as a staff, like as a strength conditioning department, like as a strength coach, like how do you maybe individually or how do you individually kind of quantify like success for yourself or for the program that
It's a
you
good question.
had?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that the one thing that we started to do, we've done it 2 years in a row now, and it's been really opening is we've done. Oh, did I lose it again? Got me?
Yes, I got you.
Okay, sorry. It just keeps kicking. Um, we've been doing exit interviews and we ask just a few simple questions and we've gotten some really, really great feedback from it. It's not something that I maybe would recommend everyone to do. You're gonna need to be ready to hear some things that you don't want to hear. But we ask them like 4 or 5 simple questions. It just starts out with, what do you think worked? What are some things that we did that you think worked for you? What did we do that you really enjoyed? Was there any part of the training that you did not understand? Was there anything that we were doing that you dreaded? Did you notice any deficiencies on the court? And where can we be better? You got to be ready to hear some things you don't want to hear. We had 2 years ago, I had an assistant, Andrea Comini, excuse me, who sensational human being, was super helpful. We put together what I thought was the best game day +1 program that we've ever done. It was like a stretching exercise, a strength exercise, a special exercise, into like a running exercise, like springy runs or bounds or whatever. Thought it was great. You get loose, start moving, start projecting, and now you're propelling and you're loose, you're ready to go, you're ready for practice. The guys hated it. Hated it. To a man, hated it. They were like, yeah, I mean, I get it, but it was awful. It hurt. I felt like crap after it. I think that I can never really recover from games because we were doing all that. Shit. So we didn't do it. We took the stuff out that they said was awful. And then to a man, the guys that came back, they were like, game day +1 or game day +1, that you changed all that stuff. That was perfect. I felt so much better. And like part of me was like, great, it worked. We did it. Part of me was like, so it was like, that was really good. And like, again, the strength coach, you hear that, you see that, you're like, wow, that makes sense. Like, oh, you stretch a little bit, you move a little bit, you start a little resistance, and you start moving it faster, and then you do something explosive. Wow, yeah, you should be primed and ready to go. They hated it. They would have rather been on fire. So we took it out. There were questions about how we were progressing, what programming we were doing. It made me look at like, maybe I don't teach these things right. And then the next year we come back and there were 0 instances where the guys said there was anything they didn't understand. There were 2 players that said, I didn't understand this part, when they just would say X, whatever the exercise was, or what they were doing here. But as the progression moved forward, I saw why we were going that way. And I was like, bingo. Okay, we're on to something. So you got to be ready and willing to listen, evolve, and make changes based on what the athletes tell you. And that's not always easy. And sometimes it sucks.
I think it sucks a lot of times, but if you're humble and you've got some humility and you're willing to make those changes and you're not just trying to repeat the program you did last year to a T, just thinking that like new pieces on the team is going to be the determinative success. Like if you're actually trying to change with them and progress, you want that feedback. And it's important too, because like the same example you had, I remember doing that with my lacrosse team before. Like I spent weeks when I talked to the coach, he's like, I want a better warm up. I want to do a different warm up. And I was like, I know, I want to see how you guys do it first and then let me kind of come in and then make the tweaks. But I want to see what they're doing to see if there's stuff I can pull out of it that works. And I did it the first day and I thought it was perfect. I had it all like printed out on certain cards, like this phase, you do this, 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 this. And he's like, this is taking too fucking long. It's like, I was like, no, it's not. They just don't know it yet. And then we made like one tweak on everything and it still kind of got it. But like to your point, like it frustrated me. I was like, I just spent all this time on it. This is perfect if they would just do it my way. And that one tweak changed everything. And they were bought in. And then I taught it one more day and I didn't ever have to do it again. Like the guys took ownership of it and they like, I mean, no one enjoys maybe warming up, but they like within the moment of like kind of getting ready for practice and getting ready for games, like maybe they were going through the motions or they were kind of in like autopilot, but they took full accountability for it. And that's way more important than me going there and trying to like run a circus and have them do it my way versus the way that's going to get them equally still prepared, but in a version that they feel more comfortable with versus me feel comfortable with.
Yep.
So I'll take the feedback any day.
Yeah, no doubt.
Nice. Well, hey, coach, like any good training session, we end the show with the finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and then maybe overtime right at the end to get us ready for the season kicking off. But you can go rapid fire or you could take your time on any, but you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, first one. Biggest influence in the strength and conditioning profession and favorite athlete growing up.
Joseph Johnson, and it's not even close. And I think that everybody needs to know who he is and his company, Ultimate Athlete Concepts. Like it, you wouldn't know who Bondarchuk or Verkhoshansky or Isern is if it wasn't for Joseph. So, Joseph Johnson, and it's again not even. There's second place isn't even close. Favorite athlete growing up? God, I'm so old. You kids aren't even going to know who Cam Neely is. But Cam Neely, he was a winger for the Boston Bruins. He was a big guy, scored goals, was a mucker, was a guy that was willing to fight a bit. He's who I aspired to be, but I'm 5'9", 145 pounds when I graduated high school. I couldn't have been Cam Neely if I was like given the what was it, the Jordan juice in Space Jam. Like it wouldn't have happened. But yeah, Cam Neely was my favorite athlete growing up. Don
Yeah.
Mattingly was number 2.
Yeah, gotta love some of the enforcers on the ice. Those are the guys playing everything. Hey, so when you're not coaching, you're not training, you're not off the basketball court, out of the weight room, like what are some of your go-to hobbies that kind of get you recharged again?
Well, my wife and I love comedy shows and experiencing the great food that is in Richmond, Virginia. But it's funny, like a lot of people that do what we do, they love sports, and I like watching other things that people are exceptional at. Comedy shows, like Broadway, musical, plays, whatever it may be. High performance is high performance. And I love all that stuff. Outside of that, we really are starting to get more and more into real estate and understanding those sort of things. So that's been sometimes fun, sometimes painstaking, sometimes more gray inducing, but it's something that I think is pretty cool.
There you go. It's definitely something you can kind of work towards and get better at
Mhm.
for sure. Hey, so if you weren't coaching, what do you think you might be doing as a profession instead? You might have already said it with real estate, if it maybe not.
I was too dumb, too young when I was younger. If I was smarter when I was like in my 20s, yeah, real estate would have been great because like I mean we're talking 2008, rolling through all that stuff. That would have been prime time, but I screwed that pooch pretty good. Initially I was going to be a phys ed teacher. I could maybe see that. Um, but I'll tell you what, man, like 20 years has been a good run. I don't know if I would want to do it anywhere else or anything else. You know, yeah, I honestly like the only other thing I could really see myself liking doing is running a lawn service, like cutting lawns, just being outside, doing something like that. But yeah, nah, man, I don't know. Like 20, shoot, since 99, so 25 years, 26 years doing this. I don't know if at this point, my brain would be able to be wired to do anything else.
Yeah, it's a long run, but hey, that might be a good lucrative business, lawn care and real estate, like tied in together. Under hey, it might be in the horizon for sure. But hey, so setting up an ideal training day for yourself, like you're in the weight room, maybe you got some of the guys in there for arm farm, or it's you by yourself. Like what is your go-to music that's playing, and then what is the best post-training meal after that lift look like?
All right, so this is some top secret stuff for the people who have interned underneath me. It's not even training. It's just like when I get going and doing things. And I'm most productive when I have this Pandora station playing, and I don't know why. Probably because I'm just one of the weirdest freaking people on the planet. It's Sister Christian Radio. It's sensational. Everything from like early 2000s rock to like early 80s hair metal. It's all there. You can't beat it. I don't care. But if we're training, just anything other than Drake, like he's trash. I don't care what you say. His music's garbage. Um, Post meal depends where I am. If I'm here, man, like this is gonna sound like such a cheesy bullshit plug, but our dining hall is awesome. And and I was mad today that I couldn't eat there. Like it's so good. But like if I had my pick of like something for me, um there's a restaurant in Richmond called Lily Pearl. It's Tiffany and my favorite spot. The braised short ribs are unreal. The mac and cheese, I mean, it's like punch a baby good, man. It's
Mm.
so awesome. Like that, if I'm cooking, uh my ribs or my smash burgers. Um yeah, that was way too long of an answer for such a simple question. But yeah, man. I'm the only creature that I've ever met that's more like food motivated than me is our dog Bubba. Like it's I'm such a fat kid at heart. Um, which is why I train all the time, so I can be a fat kid at heart. But yeah.
No, those are good answers. I'm next time I'm in Richmond, I know where to go. So that's perfect. Hey, so last one I got for you for overtime. Um, what is kind of your like favorite either under the bar or favorite coaching memory that you can kind of think of first from your time these last 25 years?
Man, that's so hard. But you know what? All right, so we were winning a game in the Atlantic 10 tournament 2 years ago, and we were up big. And I mean, like we won championships, we won NCAA tournament games. I've seen players drafted. I've got to watch my players play in the NBA. But what might have been the coolest moment was we had a walk on get a steal and get a dunk in Barclays. And when Quentin Southholt got the ball, um, and he took off, and one of our coaches put his hands up, like dribble it out. And all of us at the end of the bench were like, go, let's go. And he punched that thing. Man, like I get a little choked up thinking about it. Um, because he's the last class that made it all the way through, like they were the COVID kids. Um, but yeah, man. I mean, like, we've seen some crazy things. We won at Kentucky. We won at Vanderbilt. We beat Florida. We went to the Sweet 16. Like my third day here, we won at Fog Allen. We beat Kansas. I thought this basketball thing was easy. I'm like, dude, they just went to Kansas and won. Like this shit's easy. Like no, like we beat Wisconsin. We jokingly say we were back-to-back Big Ten champions. We beat Wisconsin the year they won it. We beat Iowa in the NCAA tournament the year they won it. But like, there's been some amazing plays, some amazing baskets, but watching a walk-on who did so much behind the scenes, funny story, we beat Davidson in the Atlantic 10 championship in 2022 in one of the best college basketball games I've ever been a part of. It's the only time I've ever been late to an arm farm. And this guy is the guy who FaceTimes me because I hadn't slept, right? And he FaceTimes me and I look at it and I'm like, oh shit. And he's the guy that gets the dunk. And it was one of the first thing that came to my mind was that. Like, there's other things that are coming to my head now, but the first thing, Quentin Southall steal the Atlantic 10 tournament at the Barclays Center against UMass into a dunk. 100%. Final answer.
That's pretty cool. It's cool to hear a story like that behind the scenes, because there's not many people that like know the story and the context behind it, and to see like the wheels turn and like remember that, and like it might not even been that important to a lot of people, like maybe the bench and like all the players know, and like it's pretty cool for him, but like it's a proud moment as a coach to kind of see, like, you see all the hard work and everything that those guys go through, especially like a walk on like that, to be in a big game in that situation and go in. That's awesome.
Honest to God, I think that might be his only career basket.
No way.
Yeah, like I don't want to say that for sure, but I think like, and it's in an NBA arena, like, and it's not like a layup, like it was like a dunk. Like, he went up there and he punched it. And I'm just like, man, that's so cool.
Yeah,
I was so happy for him.
that's
I'm
such a
still
cool
happy for him.
thing. It's such a cool thing when something like that can happen too, because it also shows that like there's a lot more. I mean, they're playing their sport, but like not everybody's going to play, not everybody's going to win, not everybody's, there's only one champion at the end. Like there's a lot more, like you can define success in a lot of different ways, and you can like be happy, and you can be like pretty ecstatic for something like that to happen, and it not be like you not be the champion at the end of the day. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more going on to it. And like you said, like we're just coaching weights, so you should be able to find a lot more positives in what we're doing on a day-to-day basis versus just kind of equating everything we do to a win or a loss. So no,
Yep.
that's awesome, coach. Hey, I know we talked about CVAPs and everything that's going on. For the listeners that want to get into that, July 20th to 21st of 2024, this year, this will release before that. But if they've got any questions for you, want to check out kind of the speaker lineup and anything you guys got going on at Richmond, follow up with you for any reason, where can they get a hold of you and see all this stuff?
Yeah, everything CVASPS, CVASPS, Charlie, Victor, Apple, Sam, Peter, Sam, and all that stands for is the Central Virginia Sport Performance Seminar. The Instagram, the Twitter sphere, or Xland, or whatever we call it now. Those are probably the two best ways, or CVASPS at Gmail. CVASPS.com. I believe it's seminar 2024. I should know this online here. Let me not give you the wrong one because I'm stupid. CVASPS.com slash 2024 dash seminar is the seminar page. And again, don't forget the code, right? If you guys have listened to me ramble for this long, the least I can do is give you 10% off. So make sure you have that written down. And if it doesn't work or there's anything, just hit me up and I'll get to the bottom of it.
We'll figure it out. Well,
I answer DMs way faster than emails.
all
I don't
right.
answer emails I'm bad.
Hey,
I'm just an awful human with it.
That's all right. Hey, you got a lot of stuff going on, and like I said, I appreciate your time. This has been awesome to kind of get you on, and I know you're a veteran in a lot of sense of the word, like as a coach, kind of in the podcast sphere, all the networking, everything you do. I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate it. And again, congratulations, and hope a lot of success for you going forward and with the conference this year. So thanks again for coming on today, Coach.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks again for having me. Keep up the good fight, man, and keep doing all the great things you're doing. Cheers, bud.
Appreciate it, Coach. Thanks.
Yeah, man.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.